Hello, and thanks for coming along to And We Have an Office Dog, the digital agency podcast where we talk to agency owner-directors and learn more about what makes them tick. From the things that make them similar to the things they'd rather have known sooner, where they've had success and where they've learned some hard lessons. All will be revealed with your host, Chris Simmons, the agency coach, and he'll be talking to a different awesome agency person in each episode, asking them 4 questions and seeing where the conversation takes us over the next 25 minutes. Okay, so let us begin. Over to you, Chris.
Thanks, voiceover guy. And on the podcast today, we've got a very good friend of mine, Mike Essex of Devise Digital. How are you doing, Mike?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Chris. Sorry, it's Devise Marketing.
Devise, isn't it? Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I got it wrong.
Yeah.
Everyone, it's my good friend Mike, who I can't remember the agency name properly. What a good start. How are you doing, Mike?
Yeah, really good. Thanks. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
No trouble at all. Just before we started recording, you mentioned that you actually have 2 office dogs and cat as well.
Yeah, I've got a pug and a cavalier.
The Cavalier is obviously going to be my favourite because it's spaniel versioned. But the pug doesn't necessarily get on with his colleague, the cat, does he?
No, he's a bit of a pain. If the cat gets on the floor in certain places, he's like, "Get off! This is my space." So, yeah. The cat was here first, so
well, makes office life a bit more fun.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, tell us all about the agency. What do you do? Just in case a client or potential member of staff's listening. What's the plug?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm the founder of Devise Marketing. We're a 2-person agency, so we're a husband and wife team, and we specialize in marketing strategy, marketing training, and digital services as well, with a hint of sort of strategy in there as well. So that's kind of SEO, PPC, and content as well.
And who would be like a sort of typical client? What do they look like?
So we work with a lot of large companies. We work with Checkatrade doing content writing for them. We work with Hampshire's Top Attractions, which is a collection of 60 attractions on the south coast. So you've got like Paultons Park, Marwell Zoo, and a few others as well. Yeah, it's a great project. And they were really good clients. Even during the pandemic, they kept their investment in SEO up. And yeah, it's massively increased their traffic once we came out of it. So yeah, I'm really, really grateful. I really thought that we'd lose them, with all the pauses going on. But yeah, they stuck with it, which is great.
Yeah, that's a company that knows the investment of digital marketing, right?
Yeah.
What's there's can't remember the name of the lady. The CEO of Burberry says never waste a good recession, and I think pandemic should be added into there as well.
Yeah, definitely. And SEO is a long-term play anyway. We all know that. And you're going to do the work today to get results in maybe 6 months or a year's time. So doing it in a quiet period is certainly no bad thing.
So how old is the agency? And essentially, husband and wife team. How's that going?
Yeah, so we're 2.5 years old now. It goes really well. I think from my point of view, it's nice having someone else who is heavily involved in the day-to-day like me. And, I don't have to get home from work and not tell my wife about the things that are stressing me out because she can see them day by day because we sit next to each other. And yeah, I think for us, it's a good system. We work on different kinds of projects. She's more focused on the content. I'm more focused on the strategy. And it's been really good for us, yeah.
Yeah, I when I ran Optus Digital all those years, Vicky, my wife, worked with me as well. And I think the one thing that I found that was not hard, but it was less enjoyable is the fact that there wasn't a huge amount to talk about at the end of the day if you'd both been doing the same thing.
True. Yeah, we'd go on the dog walk and be talking about work, and it's like, well, this is like a time to maybe get out of work and not talk about it. But yeah, I was the one always bringing it up, to be fair.
I think it's the same for everyone. So in all of that time, what do you think has been one of the biggest successes that you've seen, or one of the things that are kind of you'd hold on to?
I'm really proud of the strategic work we've done for clients. When I used to work agency side, it was more sort of tactical delivery of SEO. You go on, you change your meta tags and you do your audit and that kind of stuff, which is still useful, but I never really got to look at kind of the big picture thinking. So since starting the agency, I've been much more focused on that. We're two people, there's a limit to what we can do. But by focusing on the strategic aspects, at least we can set the path forward for clients so they can take forward, and we can help a lot more companies that way as well. So SRJ Limited, for them, we actually came up with their marketing strategy for the next 5 years. And basically looked at what their competitors were doing, where there were gaps in the market, their positioning, and all that really good stuff. And then we kind of said, okay, now we know what your strategy is. Here's the tactics that you need to deliver on the plan, and we can step away now. You've got everything you need for the next 5 years to this plan. Obviously, there's going to be fluctuations, and really, it was a prioritized plan as well. So it said, these are the activities we recommend you do. This is how much we recommend you spend, and the time you take. But if you don't have that resource available, this is how you scale up. This is how you scale down. And yeah, they're still executing that plan 2 years later and getting good results.
That's awesome. So essentially, it's very unusual, isn't it, in this industry to be able to do something like that? Because usually a strategy would be a year or sometimes 6 months, and then you'd end up repitching a year later and charging for another strategic day or whatever it might be. So doing a full 5 year strategy on its own is pretty awesome. But then I guess actually seeing 2 years later that they're executing on it must feel pretty good.
Yeah, it's really rewarding. And I think there's a lot of people in the industry, maybe younger people, who think that the idea of having a marketing plan is pointless now. They kind of come up with the idea that oh, marketing's changing every day. You've got to be super reactive and get on this and this and this. And actually, it's like, no, you set the strategy. The strategy is the long-term play, and then your tactics can fluctuate depending on what you need to do at a given time. Absolutely, but the strategy will determine what you do for those years. And if you don't have that strategy, you're just bouncing around. And I think people who've only ever worked in agencies, they don't always get that appreciation of what's going on beyond the tactics and the day-to-day stuff.
I agree, and I think in the agency world, that there's the I sound really wanky when I say this, the Sun Tzu idiom where he says, tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. And quite often, everyone goes straight into tactics mode. How many times have you seen someone else's agency's strategic document and it's just a big Excel sheet of tactical activities? No measure of success along the way, no leading indicators towards success. Like, what's the point?
Yeah, definitely. And for SRJ, we did come up with KPIs that they would have to hit at every stage of the project. So again, there was that appreciation of tactics. And I think it's an interesting debate at the moment, with people talking about maybe pausing marketing budgets. I mean, we're filming this in August, but maybe when it airs, that will be different. We'll be in full-on recession then. But
Happy Christmas, everybody.
yeah. But on that note, I think I'm not afraid to say to people, maybe you do need to reduce your marketing budgets if something isn't working, or shift budget around. I mean, I used to work under zero-based budgeting, which is where you have no marketing budget at the start of the year, and you have to make a case as you go. But what I personally liked about that was it wasn't a case of the financial director says, here's 500k to market the business for the year. You determine on January 1st what buckets it's going to go in, and you're stuck with that for the year. I was more like, no, let's actually say we'll allocate budget where we need to. We'll seek out extra budget where we feel there's ROI, and where we're generating a good ROI, we'll increase the marketing budget accordingly.
Yeah, I think that works really well when it's when you can prove it and you know what you can prove. In a larger organization with lots of other people, then it's a lot harder. I'd say, because getting that buy-in or the speed at which someone will be able to do the calculation and produce something that shows what they need. Versus also, don't forget, there's a lot of ego in the agency world, and I want a bigger budget than you, so I would ask for it straight up and straight out. I would get there straight away. Then there'd be nothing for you, no matter what the case you made.
Yeah, definitely. But I do think agencies are getting better now at justifying the spend and proving the ROI back, especially with digital activities. I mean, you can't really get an easier to track marketing activity than that.
Agreed, and I think with the current state of the global economy, and God knows what it will be like in a few months' time. Hopefully better, but let's be honest, it might not be. I think in the best agencies will be the ones that are able to show where their where the investment is going. It's not just around these are the deliverables, it's these are the leading indicators that those deliverables are successful or providing value. Because essentially you're selling an invisible, intangible thing with the promise of potential results in the future, but you want the money now. So, the best agencies will be able to prove what they're doing and be able to prove it's working.
Definitely, yeah. And the tricky thing about digital, of course, is you might do work in for 3 months and then they'll jump to another agency and then 3 months later your work starts to pay off and they get all the credit. Like, isn't that always the way?
Yes,
Um,
yeah. You get a new client, you say everything's wrong, and then a few things happen, and then you say it's all your work. That's I think that's big agencies that often happens just, and it's usually because, not to put any agencies down or anything like that. There's a critical thinking element that goes into this, and quite a lot of the time if you think about the execs and the juniors that work in an agency, they typically end up doing quite a lot of the doing. They'll look at some of the numbers, but without the context of the larger picture or what might have been done in the past. And I think with websites and with content, there's a lot of opportunity to sort of have a change log and see what's been done. But with SEO, that doesn't exist. Very rarely exists because if you'd have to look back through several years worth of reports to see when the title tag was changed and why, for example, just think of something basic. And it might not be that just because it's too short or too long that it really needs changing. It might need changing because it just isn't the right title tag. But you just don't have that ledger of what's been done and why it's been done, especially with agencies changing clients and clients changing agencies. So being able to do like a 5-year strategy and see it being executed is a great success. What would you say conversely to that might be something that you guys have done and you think that didn't work?
Yeah, I think I mean probably from a personal level, I think the main issue I did was I kind of stayed in jobs too long, like mainly due to sort of loyalty or wanting to have like a perfect CV, even though such a thing isn't really possible. So my average length in a role was around sort of 4 years, whereas most people you're looking at more sort of 2 years, maybe not that. And looking back, I think it was probably clear that I'd learnt everything I was going to do and I'd faced all the challenges I was going to face, and I'd
Yeah.
maybe been as rewarded financially as I was going to be by around maybe sort of the three year mark. So really what I'd recommend to people is to kind of look at it and say, are there any opportunities for advancement in the organization? And are you likely to learn anything new in the next year? If not, then it might be a good time to think about moving. And certainly if I'd done that a bit earlier a few times, I'd probably have progressed my career quicker. I mean, I'm definitely happy with the career that I've had. But looking back, I did have a lot of weird notions of trying to carve out this amazing, perfect CV,
Yeah.
which it doesn't exist.
No, and the funny thing is, obviously, if you've gone through rounds of hiring people in the past in various different roles that you've taken, things like that. The amount of time that you really put into someone's CV is quite small when you've got a lot of roles to fill over the course of a year. So putting a lot of effort in from your side for maybe 5 minutes of reading from someone else's is quite a lot of hard work. But I guess the good thing is that in an agency and in the role as an agency leader like you are, there's every day there's a lesson somewhere, and nothing really stays the same for very long. So I think it's got a lot of longevity in it, so to speak.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. And the type of clients I have now are maybe different to day one. At the start, it definitely was a case of like, oh my God, I've got to do this thing. I had like a notice period from my previous employer, so that gave me a little bit of time. But I wasn't like someone who had like thousands in the bank to start with or bunch of clients ready to go. It really was like a case of I need to get money in and I need to get it in now. So
Yeah,
I probably said yes to some stuff maybe I shouldn't have. But most of the clients I work with today have been with us for 2 years. So
yeah,
I'm definitely happy with the ones that I moved on to. And I did niche up early on, which was actually a conversation I had with Chris. He recommended that I established the niche. The agency coach doing his good work there.
Excellent
um,
plug.
yeah, but it was really, really good for me to do that. And I don't know why I was so worried about it. I kind of had this fear that, oh, if I've got a niche, then I'm going to lose out on loads of potential clients. But it's like, hang on, I'm just one guy. I can only really have maybe 5 clients at a time. Why am I so scared about losing a small fraction of others when really I'm only going to work with like 0.0001% of the businesses out there. So yeah, I niched up. And actually what it really was good for was when I did my outreach emails and spoke to people, I had that hook then. Without that, I found cold emails and outreach really, really hard, even when I was networking with people I'd spoke to before, without that kind of hook of saying like, we're the agency for dot, dot, dot. I struggled.
Yeah.
But once
Well,
I
you're just
had
another
that,
agency then, aren't you?
definitely, yeah. And it just felt to me like the kind of crappy, cold emails you get through LinkedIn or through your email all the time. And it's like, I don't want to be just another one of those where I'm wasting somebody's time. I want to have that hook of saying, we're the agency for this.
Yeah, and I think so when I have this kind of conversation with other agencies that have been non-niched for quite a while, so they've got quite a lot of clients, but they're all spread out. The best way to look at it is kind of get down to the numbers. It's like, okay, if you niche down, you've only then got maybe a target audience of 20% of all the businesses on the planet, which is more businesses than you could ever look to hope to work with. Then you just look at the UK, okay, it's still a good few thousand opportunities. Then you think, well, okay, so there's a lot less opportunities, but the chances of having that conversation which turns into a sale is much higher. Like you say, you send your outreach email, or you go to a networking thing and you say, I'm the guy for, we're the people who do, as opposed to we just run a digital agency.
Mm.
And it certainly does help.
Definitely. And the funny thing was I still got inquiries from people outside of that niche, who I could help anyway. So it didn't really hold us back at all,
Yeah,
but it really helped me out a lot.
absolutely. And I think it's whether you niche into a discipline or an industry is up to you. But I think niching is key. So if you think about Nicholas Stott, erudite tech SEO, like doesn't it's not tech SEO for specific industry. That's their niche is the discipline, and then you have other businesses which are niched into travel, hospitality, leisure, and tourism, which God help them in the pandemic. But you if you niche down into something, discipline or vertical, you can speak the language way better. You can either speak the language of expertise and credibility, or speak the language of we know you, we get you, or we get your clients, we know how to solve these things, and you get used to the language that's spoken around internal teams as well. So if you know the industry better, you can get on with the internal teams better, and things get deployed quicker and things like that.
And I think being able to go into a meeting and say, we've worked with X company, and everybody to nod their heads and go, oh yeah, I know who that is. You've got that instant credibility straight away, haven't you? I mean, I
Yep.
do wonder if some companies are maybe reassessing niching into certain sectors after the pandemic, because that's the first time we've really seen a situation where entire industries can be put on pause like that. Like I know there was an
Yeah.
agency where most of their clients was dentists, which would be absolutely fine normally, but I think they had to close sadly after the pandemic just because
Yeah.
of that issue.
It's it's um it's hard, isn't it, when you think about it that way? There's a few agencies which have kind of that I've worked with that have they've kind of niched into a couple of areas rather than just the one, and they've made them functionally different areas. So it would be like SaaS and travel. So if the internet goes down, or not the internet, they say if there's a massive outage of some sort of technology, planes might still fly, so people can go on holiday and things like that. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, try and hedge your bets. But niching down is definitely a key thing. What was it in general that made you think, okay, now's the time to do this? Because you say you worked in roles for a while, and then you thought, what was the switch rather than find another role in another business? What made you think I'm going to start an agency?
I think first it was the realization that being employed isn't as stable as you'd hope. Like I always thought that freelancing was the least stable option. But then after getting made redundant twice, I kind of rethought that. Um, and yeah, I kind of looked at it like, wait, what's more likely? I get made redundant or I lose all my clients at the same time. And because I had a nice 3 month notice period at the company I was at, it was kind of a case of like, well, it's now or never. I've always wanted to try doing this. I felt like as well in my career, I'd got to the point where I'd learned enough practical stuff that I could make a difference for a lot of businesses as well.
Mm,
When I left Kuzai, the main reason for doing that was because I wanted to see the wider side of marketing. So I'd only worked in digital for 8 years, and I didn't really have that understanding of different marketing channels or of,
yeah,
of marketing strategy. And I wanted to get that, and then I did 8 more years of learning that at different companies, working all around the globe on different projects, which is absolutely fascinating. And also living in-house life as well and
yeah,
experiencing problems from the client side of things. And it was like, okay, I've got enough knowledge now. I know
yeah.
enough. Consulting was always something I wanted to be as my end game, which maybe you'll correct me on it in 10 years when I'm doing something else. But it was something that, I didn't want to rush into. I wanted to make sure I had the skills and I was ready when I was going to do it.
Yeah, that's totally reasonable, and I think that the the chances of all clients leaving all at the same time, like you say, is slim, and that's how, as long as you think what's the minimum we need to be viable, then double, triple, quadruple that size as long as it's within your capacity. So let's say, for argument's sake, at the minute there's someone who's chewed their way through this podcast. They're listening to the final stretch, and they're waiting to hear of the one nugget of advice that Mike Essex will be giving them. What piece of advice would you give of either someone who's just started or someone who's just about to start running an agency?
So the main advice I'd give is it's okay to be a one-person agency or a two-person agency like us.
Hmm.
We don't have aspirations to grow bigger. We're happy just being two people who deliver a really good service
Yeah,
every month for our clients, and that's it. And I think a lot of people, they just naturally fall into that rhythm of they're fully booked, they've got no available time. Their clients want more time, or new clients come in, they don't want to turn the work on, so they take somebody on. And then, they're fully booked, so they take somebody
yeah,
else on. And before they know it, they're running an agency. But if you're someone like me who enjoys the day-to-day doing of the work and isn't really that fun, not that big on people management, then it's okay to just say, actually, I'm
yeah,
just going to be someone who delivers tactically. And, even if you look at that and say, well, won't that limit my future growth or my future potential? What I've done is I've joined the Chartered Institute of Marketing, just became a fellow last week as well, which kind of
mm,
what I'm trying to do is to
wow,
level up my marketing skills so I can deliver a better service, charge higher rates,
yeah.
and work on more senior projects. So there's still plenty of ways you can grow as an individual and in your career, even if you do stay as just a one or a two-person agency like us.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with that, and genuinely, it's that, like you say, there's nothing wrong with being a one or two person agency because it's actually what you're delivering that's the important thing. That's what an agency is. It's delivering solutions at a scale that the client can't deliver. It's not just because of huge numbers of people. And I know that, and you'll recognize this, the amount of times that you see at conferences or events when the first question someone asks when they find out you run an agency is, how many people are you?
Mm,
And as if it's a measure of success. Now, it might be a
mm,
measure of success to someone because they want to get to a certain revenue target. It might be to someone because they want to sell, and that's one of the routes to selling their agency. Um, but if you build an agency based on what you want it to be, it might be two people, it might be 50 people, it might be 300 people, but that shouldn't be a measure of how good that is. It's the results and the clients that you keep and you hold, and what good you can do for them.
mm. Yeah, sometimes I think you have to take the ego out of it. A lot of projects I can't talk about because they're for agencies or they're under NDA.
Hmm.
So I can't win awards for what I do, and I can't brag about having loads of clients, and I can't do this and this. But at the end of the day, I've built a life that I'm happy with that gives us a
Yeah,
lot of freedom, and the clients are happy, and we're happy, and yeah, what else do you need, really?
that's it. Just don't get so. In a sense, rather than the advice being about specifically the size of your agency. It's about build something that you're happy to run.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. You don't have to chase after all these other accolades. You just build something that gives you the life you want to live, and that's okay. You don't have to change it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's wonderful advice to end the podcast on. So thank you very much for coming along, Mike, and say Happy Christmas to everyone.
Happy Christmas. Thanks, Chris.
And in our next podcast, we'll be talking to another agency leader to hear about their story and learn the lessons that they've found out.